So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming here this evening. As someone recently said to me, time is a non-renewable resource. So the fact that you've taken time out from watching television or doing other things and you're here today to listen to this very important thing, I think, is very meaningful to us, those of us who are struggling to keep this work going, and hope that people will become interested and become part of the movement to sort of end this kind of abuse from happening. And it's our hope that by building this long-term relationships with these structures, that we will be able to gradually transform the way they understand violence against women and understand the context in which this occurs. We also believe that we cannot have this be a silent issue anymore, that we cannot say that this is happening between two people and within the confines of an apartment, that this should now be seen as a human rights issue, that this should be seen as a community issue, and which is why we take our work into the community, whether we are in the process of providing legal information, whether we are working with the preventive organizations, whoever we are working with. We're hoping that people who live, work, and pray in their communities will take this on as an issue and understand that unless the silence around this is broken and unless communities take ownership of the issue, that creating solutions is not going to be sustained. About a year and a half or two ago, as we sort of started thinking about our work as more peace building and nonviolence, and we started thinking about issues of inclusion, we realized that, although we were talking about working with everybody in the family, that we had also actually fallen into the pit of not really looking at the fact that a lot of the families that are struggling with violence have companion animals or pets in the family. And that we had never taken a serious look at this, although a lot of us were aware of it, were interested in this, were trying to look at it. We never really created a forum for everybody to come together and look at this in a real way. So about a year ago, we got very serious about this and we started thinking about how to infuse this in our work. We also realized that in New York City, whether you're working in child welfare, domestic violence, or the animal abuse arena, that these were very separate arenas of work, and that we did not really, truly, meaningfully collaborate with each other. The domestic violence advocates worked in their field, the animal cruelty folks worked in their field, and we never really had any kind of forum to talk about the intersections of these two issues. And sometimes, when there's enough goodwill and there's enough, I think, fight in us, then something comes along. And we were really grateful to actually come in contact with the Kinder World Foundation that actually funded what you're seeing today. They funded the creation of... They realized this gap in New York City in the year 2007. So we started a small work group that includes a lot of the people that you see here today, with the idea that once we get together, we will create a synergy, that we will start to look at ways in which these two spheres of working can connect, ways in which we can figure out why women who want to leave homes or seek safety are unable to do so, if in fact there is no way that they can keep their pets in safely anywhere. So we really started looking at this, and the group came together nicely. We now have a fairly large membership and diverse membership, and everybody from HRA to Department of Aging, to battered women's shelters, to domestic violence advocates, to child welfare folks, to the Mayor's Alliance, to some veterinary hospitals. We have a number of Department of Health, all of whom are interested in being part of this effort. After meeting a couple of times together, we came to the understanding that we really need to split up into committees to get any work done. So the two committees we have right now are a committee that's working on sheltering and systemic issues, which is really going to look at why there is no universal screening happening in domestic violence shelters, in non-residential programs. Why are we not asking the question about families owning pets, either currently or in the past, as a way to figure out the level of violence that might be happening in the family? We thought about cross-training different people. We also wanted to look at really collecting some data, because whenever you talk to people about this issue, they're like, well, it mustn't be happening that often. I'm sure it's just, I don't know why you're focusing so much on it. When in fact, we know anecdotally that this happens a lot. You will see in the video some statistics that will come up for you, that this does happen fairly frequently, and that people don't speak about it. Women don't feel free to speak about it because we haven't created an environment where we allow them the freedom to express this. There's already a lot of shame and guilt associated with being a victim of violence, and it's very difficult if we are hoping that they will proactively and affirmatively come out with these kinds of information. So the fact that we need to be cognizant of that and introduce this in all of our screening tools, it became very evident to us. And also the fact that, if we aren't able to convince people, how are we going to convince funders and researchers that this is happening a lot if we don't systematically collect the data? So we are hoping that the Safe Horizon helpline, which funnels people into shelters, will start to actually ask these questions, and we can get a sense of what's happening. We want to create training curriculum that we can use, which will have a different module that we can use just to train the human services folks to understand this link, how deep and how strong it is and how important it is. We also realize that if in fact we do create some structures in the community for animals to be held safely while women are in shelters, then that social workers are not really trained to talk about this with their clients. The idea that we don't know how to counsel them around the issues, that they might need to be separated from their family, from their pets either temporarily or sometimes need to give them up for adoption, and really look at that in a very deep way. And of course, we also started thinking about the fact that right now, if we go out and do all this work, where are the animals going to be sheltered? So the idea of really looking at other programs, model programs around the United States, and trying to figure out a way in which we can maybe create a volunteer-driven sort of foster care situation for animals might also be something important to look at. And lastly, of course, we wanted to look at the policy issues. Is it possible? Is there a reason why in shelters women cannot have pets with them? If there isn't, then is there a way we can make sure that happens, that people don't have to be separated from their family member? And also importantly to remember that, the pets themselves are victims of serious violence when they're in these homes. They're also witness to the violence that happens around them. And they have a very therapeutic effect on the family, that families get attached to it, children are emotionally attached to their pets, and that they provide this one moment of happiness and hope in families that are really struggling with trauma and torture. So it was very important for us, looking at all of these things, to create this work group and really go out there and do this work. The work of the work group will obviously grow organically as the project moves forward, because we want to make sure we're meeting the needs that are expressed by the community, that we're not just coming up with ideas that we think are worthwhile, that we hear back from the field what's important, what is working, and that we make sure that we meet those needs as we go along.